You are such a selfish, eccentric old woman. You value this house more than your own family." My daughter-in-law screamed over the phone. She had even brought her own mother right to my doorstep, along with the children and packed suitcases, assuming I would let them move in. I didn't argue or beg. That day, I decided to do something they never imagined I would dare to do. Thank you for being here with Silent Revenge with Auntie May. It means much. Tell me where you are watching from, what country or city. I love seeing this community grow worldwide. Also, please note, this story includes fictional elements added for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to names or settings is coincidental, but the message remains useful. It was October 2025 when everything I believed about my family began to change. The pain started before I even opened my eyes. It was the kind of pain that lived in the bone, deep, insistent, impossible to ignore. My right wrist had been in a cast for 11 days, and the weight of the plaster still surprised me every time I shifted position on the couch. The doctor had been clear when he discharged me from Mercy General. "Mrs. Evelyn, you need at least 4 to 6 weeks of complete rest. No lifting, no cooking beyond the simplest meals, no stress." He had said that last word carefully, the way doctors do when they know the real danger isn't physical. I had spent the morning doing almost nothing, which was harder than it sounds, for a woman who had spent 70 years doing everything. I had managed a cup of tea with my left hand spilling a little on the counter and leaving it there because bending to wipe it up hurt too much. I had moved from my bedroom to the living room couch in 3 slow stages, resting between each one. I had watched the oak tree in my front yard drop 2 leaves in the October wind, and I had been grateful for something so small to look at. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't asked for help, because the one time I had reached out a short voice message to Daniel 2 days after the fall, telling him what had happened, telling him I was home and recovering, he had replied with a single text, "Okay, Mom, take care." 4 words, not a question, not an offer, just 4 words and then silence. So I was alone, and I had made my peace with that for the afternoon. That was when I heard the car. It pulled up slowly, the engine idling for a moment before it cut off. I didn't move right away. Deliveries happened. Neighbors parked on the street sometimes. I told myself it was nothing and closed my eyes again. Then came the voices, 2 of them overlapping, one higher than the other. A child's voice, then another, and then the unmistakable sound of wheels, hard plastic wheels dragging across concrete, the sound luggage makes when someone is pulling more than they can carry. I opened my eyes. Getting up from the couch took longer than I wanted. I had to use my left arm to push myself upright, keeping my casted wrist close to my chest, and even then the movement sent a dull throb all the way up to my shoulder. I walked carefully to the front window and moved the curtain aside with 2 fingers. What I saw made my chest go tight in a way that had nothing to do with the fall. Rachel was standing in my driveway. My daughter-in-law in her camel-colored coat, her dark hair pulled back, her face already set in the expression I had come to recognize over 11 years of knowing her. The expression that meant she had already decided how things were going to go. Beside her stood a woman I recognized as Patricia, Rachel's mother. I had met her perhaps 4 times over the years, always briefly, always at gatherings, where we exchanged pleasantries and nothing more. She was a heavy-set woman in her mid-60s, wearing a quilted vest and carrying an oversized purse on one shoulder. She was looking at my house the way people look at things they are already calculating the value of. And then there were the children, Emma, who was 7, and little Cooper, who had just turned 5. Emma was dragging a rolling suitcase nearly as tall as she was. Cooper had a backpack on his front and another small bag in each hand, and he was listing to one side under the weight of it. There were more bags on the driveway, a large hard-sided suitcase, 2 duffel bags, a canvas tote stuffed so full the zipper hadn't closed, a box sealed with packing tape. This was not a visit. I let the curtain fall back into place and stood very still in the middle of my living room. My wrist throbbed. The afternoon light came through the fabric in long, pale stripes across the floor. The knock came 3 seconds later, sharp, confident, the knock of someone who expected the door to open. I did not move toward it. For a moment, I simply breathed, and in that breath, I understood something I hadn't been able to name before that afternoon. There are two kinds of moments when someone shows up at your door. The first kind is when they come to give you something, company, comfort, a casserole dish covered in foil. The second kind is when they come to take something. The weight of those suitcases, the box with the packing tape. Patricia's appraising eyes, all of it told me exactly which kind of moment this was. The knock came again harder. I walked to the kitchen instead. I filled a glass of water and stood at the kitchen counter and drank it slowly. My hands were not shaking. That surprised me. I had expected them to shake. Then I heard Rachel's voice, and every quiet thought I'd managed to hold on to went still. She had her phone to her ear. She was not speaking quietly. She was standing on my porch in the middle of a residential street in full October daylight, and she was speaking at a volume that made sure anyone within 30 feet could hear every word. "Your mother is unbelievable." Her voice carried through the door, through the window, through the walls themselves. "We drove 40 minutes and she won't even open the door. She's standing right there, Daniel. I know she is." I stood in my kitchen and listened. "Your mother is a crazy old woman, you know that." The words landed hard. She'd rather hold on to that house than hold on to her own family. There was a pause. I imagined Daniel on the other end of the line in his office, or his car pinching the bridge of his nose, the way he did when he didn't want to deal with something. Then Rachel said, her voice dropping just slightly but still perfectly audible, "Maybe your mother forgot. We're the only ones who still need her. One day she's going to wake up and realize that house of hers can't love her back the way family can." I set my water glass down on the counter. Outside, I heard Patricia say something low to Rachel. Rachel responded. Then Patricia turned toward the house, and even through the curtain, I could feel her gaze moving across the front of it, slowly, the way someone looks at a property they are trying to understand. I stayed where I was. The knocking started again. I did not answer the door. The knocking continued for another minute, then stopped. I heard Rachel's heels on the porch boards, back and forth, the sharp click of someone pacing, because standing still felt like losing. Cooper said something in a small voice, and Rachel told him to sit down on the suitcase and wait. Emma asked if Grandma was home. Nobody answered her. I moved to the armchair nearest the side window, the one with the thin curtain I'd never gotten around to replacing. If I sat at just the right angle, I could see a slice of the porch without being seen. I lowered myself into the chair, carefully keeping my casted wrist against my stomach, and I watched. Rachel had stopped pacing. She was standing with her back to the door, now facing the yard, her arms crossed tight over her chest. Patricia stood beside her, still holding that oversized purse, still looking at the house, the way she had from the driveway. Not at the door. At the house. The roof line, the windows, the width of the front porch. Then Rachel said something to her mother low enough that I almost missed it. Almost. My side window was cracked open half an inch. I had opened it that morning to let in some air, and I had not closed it since. In the stillness of the afternoon, with no traffic passing and no wind moving through the yard, their voices reached me clearly enough. "She's not going to open it," Rachel said. Her voice had changed. The performance was gone. This was her real voice. Flat, certain, slightly bored. "She's stubborn. Always has been." Patricia made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Then she said, "It doesn't matter. She'll wear down. Women like her always do." "That's what I told Daniel." Rachel shifted her weight, recrossing her arms. "I told him give her an hour. She'll feel guilty about the kids being outside and she'll open up." Patricia looked at Cooper, who had done as he was told and was sitting on the large suitcase, kicking his feet against the side of it in a slow rhythm. Emma had found a stick somewhere and was drawing shapes on the porch railing. Patricia watched them for a moment, then turned back to the house. "Besides," she said, dropping her voice just slightly, "it's not like she's using all this space. One woman rattling around in a 4-bedroom house." She tilted her head toward the upper windows. "You've got 2 kids. You need room. This makes sense." Rachel nodded. "We've been paying that mortgage on our place for 12 years. Might as well let somebody else cover it for a while." "Smart," Patricia said. Rental income is rental income, and this way you're not paying for both. I sat very still in my armchair. She won't even notice the difference after the first week, Rachel continued. She'll get used to having people around, probably be good for her. She's too isolated out here anyway. Patricia made that sound, again the one that meant agreement without committing to words. Then she said, "Just make sure Daniel stays firm. If he goes soft on you, this falls apart." "Daniel usually sees things my way once I explain things to him," Rachel said. "He just needs to understand why this makes sense." There was a pause. Emma called out that she was thirsty, and Rachel told her there was a water bottle in the front pocket of the blue bag. The child rummaged around and found it. Cooper stopped kicking the suitcase and leaned his head against it instead, his eyes drooping. He was tired. Of course he was tired. He was 5 years old and had been dragged 40 minutes in a car to stand on a porch because his mother had decided this was the day she was moving her family into her mother-in-law's home. I looked at him through the thin curtain and felt something pull in my chest. Not guilt. Something more complicated than guilt. I loved that little boy. I had held him the day he came home from the hospital. I had sung to him when he had ear infections and couldn't sleep. I had taught Emma how to make biscuits from scratch in this very kitchen, both of us dusted in flour up to our elbows. None of that was Rachel's doing, and none of it gave Rachel the right to use those children as the reason I was supposed to surrender my home, because that was what this was. She had said it herself in her flat, certain voice, with the performance stripped away. Rental income, mortgage covered by someone else. Daniel stays firm. One woman rattling around in a 4-bedroom house. This was not about the children needing their grandmother. This was about Rachel having done the math and decided my home was the most convenient solution to an equation I had never agreed to be part of. I looked down at my casted wrist resting against my stomach. 11 days ago, I had been alone on this floor, unable to get up, reaching for my phone with my left hand because my right one wouldn't work. I had lain there for 20 minutes before I could manage to call anyone. And in those 11 days, neither Rachel nor Daniel had driven 40 minutes to check on me. But they had driven 40 minutes today, with suitcases. I leaned my head back against the chair and closed my eyes. Outside, Patricia said something too quiet to hear. Rachel laughed once short and sharp. Cooper had gone quiet on his suitcase, probably asleep, sitting up. When I opened my eyes again, I looked at the front door. The deadbolt was turned. I had done that this morning out of habit long before any of this began. And for the first time in a very long time, I was grateful for a habit I had never had to think about before. I was not going to open that door, and something told me that by the time this afternoon was over, I was going to need to be very sure of a great many other things as well. 20 minutes passed. I knew because I watched the clock on the mantel, the small brass one my husband Gerald had bought at an antique market in Savannah 31 years ago. I had always meant to replace it with something more modern and somehow never had. It kept perfect time. 20 minutes and Rachel was still on my porch. She had stopped talking to Patricia. The two of them had settled into a silence that felt less like rest and more like strategy, the kind of quiet that precedes a decision. Patricia had moved to the porch railing and was sitting on it, which I had always asked people not to do, because the wood on the left post had been soft since last winter, and I hadn't gotten around to having it repaired. She didn't know that. She hadn't asked. Emma had given up on her stick and was sitting on the top porch step, chin in her hands, staring at the street. Cooper had fallen fully asleep against the large suitcase, his cheek pressed to the hard shell of it, his mouth slightly open. He looked uncomfortable. He looked exactly like what he was, a 5-year-old boy who had no idea why he was here or what was happening, only that the adults around him had decided this was where he needed to be today. I watched him sleep and felt that complicated pull in my chest again. Then Rachel straightened up. She turned to face the door, and even through the thin curtain, I could see the shift in her posture. Shoulders, back, chin, lifted, the deliberate arrangement of someone who has decided to change tactics. She looked at Patricia. Patricia gave a small nod. And then Rachel did something that made my stomach drop. She reached down and touched Emma's shoulder. "Baby," she said loud enough to Carrie. "Come stand over here with me." Emma looked up. "Why?" "Just come here, sweetheart." Rachel drew her daughter to her side, one hand on the girl's shoulder, positioning her directly in front of the door. Then she reached over and nudged Cooper awake. The boy startled, blinking, confused. Rachel took his hand and pulled him gently to his feet until he was standing beside his sister. Both children directly in front of my door, the suitcases arranged behind them like a backdrop. I understood immediately what she was doing. A woman on the far side of the street had slowed her walk. She was holding a grocery bag in each hand, and she had stopped pretending to look anywhere other than my porch. 2 houses down, a man washing his car had turned off the hose. The street was quiet enough that Rachel's next words would reach every single one of them. "Mom." Rachel's voice had changed again. Gone was the flat boardroom tone she had used with Patricia. This was something softer, something performed, something designed to be heard by people who didn't know the backstory. "Mom, are you really going to leave these babies standing outside? Emma hasn't eaten since breakfast. Cooper's exhausted." Emma looked up at her mother, uncertain whether she was supposed to say something. "Mom, please." Rachel's voice cracked on the word please in a way that I recognized had nothing to do with genuine distress. "We have nowhere else to go. You're their grandmother." The woman across the street had stopped walking entirely. I pressed my back against the wall beside the window, out of the sight line of anyone on the porch, and I breathed slowly through my nose. My wrist throbbed in its cast. My legs were tired from sitting in the armchair. And some old deep party of me, the part that had spent decades answering every knock, solving every problem, absorbing every crisis, that part of me wanted to move toward the door. I did not move, because I knew exactly what Rachel had just done. She had taken 2 tired children and arranged them like furniture. She had positioned them in front of my door, the way you position a sign in a storefront window. She had manufactured a scene, and she had done it knowing that the audience was the neighborhood, and the message was simple. Look at the grandmother who won't let her grandchildren inside. If I opened that door now, it would not be because I had chosen to. It would be because I had been cornered into it in front of witnesses. And Rachel would know, she would know with absolute certainty that the way to move me was to make me feel watched, to make me feel judged, to make me afraid of what the woman across the street thought of me. She would use that knowledge for the rest of my life. Patricia had moved off the railing and was standing behind the children, now completing the picture. 3 generations on a doorstep, 1 woman inside refusing to open up. The story wrote itself, and it was not a story that was fair to me, but fairness had never been the point. Rachel tried once more. "The kids are tired, Mom. Whatever is going on between us, the kids don't deserve this." Emma tugged at Rachel's sleeve. "Mommy, my feet hurt." "I know, baby." Rachel looked directly at the door, at me, though she couldn't see me. "I know they do." I looked at my granddaughter's face, the confusion on it, the tiredness, the way she kept glancing up at her mother for cues about how to feel. Emma was 7 years old. She did not know she was being used. She did not know her mother had rented out their house that morning and driven here with a box sealed with packing tape because she had decided my home was available. She only knew her feet hurt and she wanted to go inside somewhere. I pressed my hand flat against the wall. "I'm sorry," I thought, looking at her through the curtain. "I am sorry you are tired. I am sorry your mother brought you here. I am sorry that none of this is your fault and all of it is being done in your name." But I did not open the door, because I understood something in that moment with a clarity I had not felt in years. If I gave in now, if guilt in the neighbor's eyes and Emma's tired face were enough to make me abandon the boundary I had finally, at 70 years old, managed to hold, then I would never hold one again. Rachel would have learned the precise combination that unlocked me, and she would use it without hesitation every single time she needed something. The woman across the street eventually kept walking. The man with the hose turned the water back on, and I stayed exactly where I was. I heard his car before I saw it. Daniel drove a dark blue pickup truck that had a loose heat shield under the engine, a rattling metallic sound I had been telling him to fix for 2 years. I recognized it the moment it turned onto my street, and something in me went very still. Not afraid, not relieved, just still the way you go still when something you have been dreading finally arrives and there is nothing left to do but wait for it. He pulled into the driveway behind Rachel's car and cut the engine. Through the curtain, I watched him climb out, tall, broad-shouldered, his father's build, but his grandmother's dark eyes. He was still in his work clothes. He'd come straight from the office. That meant Rachel's call had reached him mid-afternoon, and he had driven here without stopping to change, without stopping to think, apparently without stopping at all. Rachel moved toward him immediately. She said something fast and low, one hand on his arm, turning him slightly away from the door as if she were briefing him. Patricia stepped back to give them space. Emma ran to her father and grabbed his hand. Daniel looked down at her, then at Cooper, still groggy on the suitcase, then at the front door. His jaw tightened. He said something to Rachel. She nodded and pointed at the door. He nodded back. Then he walked up to my door and knocked. Not the sharp, demanding knock Rachel had used. This was different, 3 measured beats, the knock of someone who believed they were being reasonable. I stayed in my chair. He knocked again. "Mom." His voice came through the door clearly. "Mom, Mom, I know you're in there. Open up." I did not move. He tried the handle. The deadbolt held. He stepped back, and I heard him exhale, long and slow, the particular exhale of a man recalibrating. Then his phone was in his hand. Mine buzzed on the side table beside me. I looked at the screen. Daniel. I picked it up. "Mom." His voice in my ear was different from his voice through the door, closer, more careful. "What is going on?" "Hello, Daniel," I said. "Why won't you open the door?" I looked at my casted wrist resting in my lap. "How is your Tuesday going?" A pause. "What?" "I'm asking how your day is going. It's a normal question people ask each other." "Mom, this isn't the time for—" "It's never the time," I said. "That's what I've noticed." He exhaled again. "Okay, I'm sorry. How are you feeling?" "My wrist hurts," I said. "It's been hurting for 11 days, but thank you for asking. That's the first time anyone from your household has asked me that." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight to it. "Mom." His voice had shifted harder now, the careful tone dropping away. "I need you to open this door. Rachel and the kids have been standing outside for almost an hour. This is not okay." "I agree," I said. "It's not okay. It wasn't okay when Rachel decided to drive here without calling. It wasn't okay when she brought your mother-in-law along. And it really wasn't okay when she packed a box with packing tape, Daniel, because people don't seal boxes with packing tape when they're coming for a visit." Another silence. Shorter this time. "We're going through a difficult time right now," he said. "We needed somewhere to stay for a while." I thought, "You thought I would say yes," I said. "Because I always say yes, I understand that. But I sent you a message 11 days ago telling you I needed rest and no visitors. You replied with 4 words, and now you're standing on my porch asking me why I won't open the door. Mom, you're making this into something bigger than it is." I felt something firm settle in my chest. "Daniel, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Did you know I was recovering from a fall when Rachel decided to come here today?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Did Rachel know?" A longer pause. "Yes." "Then I need you to explain to me," I said, keeping my voice even, "why the first time anyone from your family has shown up at my door in 11 days is today, with suitcases." He didn't answer. "You're not here because you're worried about me," I continued. "You're here because Rachel called you and told you to come fix the situation. And fixing the situation means getting me to open the door. That's why you're here, Daniel, not because you wanted to check on your mother." "That's not fair." His voice had an edge to it now. "I've been busy. Work has been—" "I know work has been demanding," I said. "It was demanding when I paid your college tuition so you could get that job. It was demanding when I watched Emma for 9 days so you could go to that conference in Phoenix. It's always demanding, and I have always understood that. But understanding someone's demands is different from being one of them. Mom, "Do you want to know what I did when I fell?" I asked. "I laid on the kitchen floor for 20 minutes because I couldn't get up. I called 911 myself. I went to the hospital by myself. I came home by myself. I have been here by myself for 11 days, and the first time my son shows up is because his wife needs a favor." The line was quiet for a long moment. When Daniel spoke again, his voice was lower. Something had shifted in it. Not quite remorse, not yet, but something adjacent to it. A crack in the certainty. "Mom, I didn't know it was that bad." "I know you didn't," I said. "That's the problem." I ended the call. Through the curtain, I watched him lower the phone from his ear and stand very still on my porch. Rachel said something to him. He held up one hand, a gesture I recognized, the gesture that meant not right now. She said something else. He shook his head. He stood there looking at the door for a long time. And for the first time all afternoon, I saw something on his face that wasn't frustration or impatience or the performance of a man handling a difficult situation. He looked uncertain. I watched him reach up and rub the back of his neck with one hand, a gesture so familiar it made something ache behind my sternum. And I thought about all the times I had watched him do that exact thing, all the way back to when he was 9 years old and had broken my mother's ceramic lamp and didn't know how to tell me. He had always known eventually how to tell me. I turned away from the window and sat down at the kitchen table. The drawer across the room held a blue folder I had not opened in almost 2 years. The drawer stuck a little the way it always did in October when the humidity changed and the wood swelled slightly in its frame. I worked it open with my left hand, careful not to jar my wrist, and there it was. A blue folder worn at the corners, the tab labeled in my own handwriting. I had written the label 11 years ago, the winter after Gerald died, when I had sat at this same kitchen table for 3 days straight, putting everything in order, because I did not know what else to do with grief except organize it. I had listed every account, every policy, every deed, every decision about what should happen to my life if I was no longer able to make those decisions myself. I had done it carefully and thoroughly, and then I had put it in this drawer and tried not to think about it. I carried it to the table and sat down. Outside, I could still hear voices. Lower now the performance had ended, and what remained was the ordinary frustration of people who had not gotten what they came for. I heard Rachel say Daniel's name twice sharply. I heard Daniel respond in a tone I couldn't make out through the glass. I heard one of the children, Emma, I thought, ask if they were going home. I opened the folder. The first page was a summary sheet I had typed and printed years ago, a single-page overview of everything inside. Beneficiaries, account numbers, property details, medical directives. I had updated it twice since Gerald died, most recently 3 years ago, when I had refinanced the house and the account numbers had changed. I read through it slowly. Daniel's name was everywhere. Primary beneficiary on the life insurance policy, named executor of the estate, listed as the person authorized to make medical decisions on my behalf if I was ever unable to make them myself, what the state called a healthcare proxy, a legal designation that gave him the right to speak for me if I was incapacitated. I had chosen him without hesitation when I filled out that form. He was my son. It had seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I turned to the healthcare proxy document and read it again. A healthcare proxy in this state was a straightforward legal instrument. The person you named had authority to communicate with doctors, make treatment decisions, approve or refuse procedures, everything that required a voice when you no longer had one. I knew I could update my healthcare proxy while I was still mentally capable, following the requirements of my state. I wanted the person making decisions for me to be someone I truly trusted. I thought about 11 days ago. The floor, the 20 minutes, my left hand reaching for the phone. If something had gone wrong that morning, if I had hit my head instead of my wrist, if I had been unconscious, Daniel would have been the person standing in the hospital, deciding what happened to me. Daniel, who had responded to my voice message about the fall with 4 words. Daniel, who had arrived at my house today, not because he was worried, but because Rachel had called him. I turned to the next section, the will. Under current law in this state, a will could be amended at any time by the person who made it, provided that person was competent, meaning of sound, mind understanding what they owned and who they were leaving it to. An amendment to a will was called a codicil, and it did not require rewriting the entire document. It required a written statement signed and dated, witnessed by two people who were not beneficiaries. Simple, clean, legal. I had a notepad in the kitchen drawer. I had a pen in the cup beside the coffee maker. I did not reach for them yet. Instead, I turned to the property section and read through the deed. My name, only the house, had been in my name alone, since Gerald and I had it transferred during the refinancing, 8 years before he died. We had done it for estate planning reasons, on the advice of our attorney at the time. Whatever the original reason, the result was simple. This house belonged to me entirely without condition. No one else's name was on that document. The deed listed me as the sole owner of the property, and after Gerald's estate, matters were settled. No other person had ownership rights recorded on the home. I thought about what Patricia had said through the cracked window. One woman rattling around in a 4-bedroom house. Doesn't make sense. Younger people need the space. I thought about the way she had looked at the roofline, the way she had sat on my porch railing without asking. I thought about Rachel's voice, flat certain, the performance gone, saying, rental income is rental income, and she'll wear down women like her, always do. I had spent 11 years making sure Daniel would be taken care of. 11 years of careful organization, of keeping everything updated, of making sure the right person had the right authority when the time came. I had done it out of love, and I had done it assuming that love was mutual, that the person I had named in every document was someone who at minimum would answer the phone when I was hurt. He had answered today, after Rachel called him. I picked up the pen. I did not make any permanent changes that afternoon. What I did was something smaller and more deliberate. I took the notepad, and I wrote down in 2 careful columns what each document currently said, and what I was considering changing it to. Healthcare proxy, Daniel, currently. Possible replacement, my neighbor Margaret, who had driven me to a follow-up appointment last spring without being asked who had left soup on my porch the week after the fall, with a note that said simply, "Let me know if you need anything." She had meant it. I knew she had meant it because she had not needed anything from me in return. Executor of the estate, Daniel, currently. I stared at his name for a long time. Outside, I heard a car door open and close. Then another, the engine Rachel had arrived in, turned over. I looked up from the folder toward the window. Through the curtain, I could see the shape of Rachel's car backing slowly out of the driveway. They were leaving. Not all of them. Daniel's truck was still there. But Rachel and Patricia and the children were going the Suitcases, presumably loaded back into the trunk, the box with the packing tape returned to wherever it had come from. I looked back down at the notepad, at Daniel's name written twice in my own handwriting. Then I heard it loud, clear, traveling across the yard and through the glass without any difficulty at all. Rachel's voice from the open window of her car as she pulled away. "If you can't even fix this, Daniel, what exactly are you good for?" I set the pen down. I sat with that sentence for a long time. If you can't even fix this, Daniel, what exactly are you good for? I had heard Rachel speak to my son in many ways over 11 years, impatiently, dismissively, with the particular brand of contempt that people develop for the people they have decided are useful rather than loved. But I had never heard her say something quite so bare, quite so unguarded, quite so perfectly revealing of the arithmetic she had built their marriage on. She had not said it inside the house where only Daniel could hear. She had said it through an open car window loudly enough for the yard and the street and anyone paying attention to receive it clearly, including me. I looked down at the notepad on the table, the 2 columns, what the documents currently said, what I was considering. I picked up the pen. I was not angry when I began writing. That surprised me. I had expected anger, the hot, clarifying kind that makes your hand move fast and your jaw set tight. But what I felt instead was something quieter, older. the feeling of a woman who has finally run out of reasons to wait. I drew a line through Daniel's name in the healthcare proxy column. In 11 years, I had needed medical care 4 times that required someone to advocate for me, once for a knee procedure, once for a reaction to a medication, once when I had a minor cardiac event that turned out to be nothing, and 11 days ago when I fell on my kitchen floor. 3 of those 4 times I had managed entirely on my own, because calling Daniel meant calling Rachel, and calling Rachel meant explaining myself. And explaining myself to Rachel had always felt like standing in front of a tribunal and being found lacking regardless of the evidence. The 4th time I had sent a voice message. He had replied with 4 words. I wrote Margaret's name in the column. She lived 4 houses down in the cream-colored Cape Cod with the vegetable garden along the side fence. I had known her for 9 years. She was 63, recently retired from a career in hospital administration, which meant she understood medical environments in a way that most people did not. She knew how to talk to doctors. She knew what questions to ask. She had driven me to a follow-up appointment last April because my regular driver had canceled, and she had sat in the waiting room for 2 hours without complaint, without checking her phone more than twice, without once making me feel like I was an inconvenience she was generously tolerating. She had left soup on my porch the week after the fall. Daniel had sent 4 words. The choice was not difficult. I turned to the codicil section, the amendment page I had clipped to the back of the will years ago for exactly this kind of moment. I knew any changes to my estate documents had to follow the legal requirements of my state. I wanted everything updated properly and clearly. Mrs. Patterson from next door sometimes sat on her porch in the evenings. The young man who rented the house across the street, Kevin I thought his name was, had helped me carry groceries in twice this past summer. Neither of them was in my will. Both were the kind of people who might be home on a Tuesday evening. I was not going to ask them tonight. Tonight I was going to write what I intended. Tomorrow, when the pain in my wrist was manageable and my handwriting was steadier, I would make it official. But I wrote it clearly on the notepad. Any person who repeatedly disregarded my medical condition, my stated boundaries, or my autonomy over my own property and decisions would not automatically receive the benefits previously designated to them. Clear, specific, legal. I set the pen down and looked at what I had written. Outside, Daniel's truck had not moved. I could see the shape of it through the curtain, just sitting there, engine off, no sign of movement. He was still in my driveway. I wondered what he was doing. Sitting behind the wheel, perhaps staring at the steering wheel, calling Rachel back, trying to decide what came next. Then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Daniel. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Mom. His voice was different from earlier. The certainty was gone. What remained was something rawer, the voice of a man who had just heard his wife tell him he was useless through a car window and was still sitting in the yard of the mother he had failed to check on for 11 days. Can we talk? We are talking, I said. I mean, really talk. Can I come in? I looked at the folder on the table, the notepad beside it, the 2 columns and the names I had written. Not tonight, Daniel. Mom. I'm tired, I said. My wrist hurts. I have been managing a great deal today, and I don't have anything left for a conversation that requires me to take care of your feelings at the same time. A long pause. That's fair, he said quietly. It was the last thing I expected him to say. I'm going to ask you something, I said, and I need you to answer me honestly. Okay. Did you know Rachel had arranged for someone to rent your house before she came here today? The pause that followed told me everything before he spoke. It was too long. It had too much shape to it, the shape of a man deciding how much of the truth he could afford to give. I knew she was looking into it, he finally said. I didn't know she'd finalized anything, but you knew the general direction of things. Another pause, shorter. Yes. I closed my eyes briefly. Thank you for telling me that. Mom, I'm sorry. I should have called you. I should have come by. I don't have a good excuse for that. No, I agreed. You don't. I want to make it right. I looked at his name on the notepad, written twice. Then at Margaret's name, written once in the same handwriting replacing his. Making it right isn't something that happens in one conversation. I said. Or one evening in the driveway. I know. Go home, Daniel. Where Rachel has He stopped himself. Never mind, I'll figure it out. That would be a good start, I said. I ended the call. I sat at the kitchen table in the quiet that followed and listened to his truck eventually start the loose heat shield rattling as the engine turned over the sound, fading as he pulled out of the driveway and drove away. Then there was nothing. Just the brass clock on the mantel and the October dark pressing against the windows and the folder open in front of me. I read what I had written on the notepad one more time. Then I closed the folder, placed the notepad on top of it, and carried them both to the counter where I would see them first thing in the morning. I was not finished. But for tonight, I had done enough. 3 days passed. The first morning I woke before 6 and lay in bed listening to the house. No voices, no wheels on the driveway, no one in the kitchen making coffee without asking. Just the refrigerator cycling on and off the furnace ticking in the basement, a sparrow doing something persistent in the oak tree outside my window. I had forgotten what an ordinary morning sounded like. Not peaceful, I had told myself for years that my house was peaceful, but genuinely quiet in the way that only happens when you are not waiting for anyone. I got up, slowly made coffee with my left hand, and sat at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me. The previous evening I had written out the changes in careful columns. That morning, with the light better and my thinking clearer, I read through everything once more. Then I called Margaret. She answered on the second ring the way she always did, as if she had been doing something nearby and simply picked up without urgency. I explained what I needed 2 witnesses for a legal document, nothing complicated, half an hour of her time. She said she would come by at 10 and bring Mrs. Patterson, who she happened to know was home that morning. I thanked her. She said, of course, and then asked how my wrist was feeling, which was the first question anyone had led with in 11 days, and I had to take a breath before I answered. By 11 o'clock it was done. Margaret and Mrs. Patterson sat at my kitchen table and watched me sign the codicil with my left hand, the letters uneven but legible, my name clear enough that no one could question it. Margaret witnessed it without asking what it said. Mrs. Patterson signed where I indicated, and then patted my hand once briefly, and said she was glad I was getting my affairs in order. Neither of them made it into a conversation about my son. Neither of them needed to know the details. They signed, I thanked them, and Margaret stayed another 20 minutes to help me reach a container on the upper shelf that I hadn't been able to get to since the fall. Before she left, she set a container of chicken soup on the counter. I made too much, she said, which we both knew was not true. Thank you, I said. She nodded and left without making anything of it. I stood at the counter for a moment after she was gone, looking at the soup. Then I put it in the refrigerator and went back to the table. The signed codicil was in the folder now next to the updated healthcare proxy form with Margaret's name on it instead of Daniel's. Everything was in order. Everything was mine. The next 2 days were quieter than I had expected. Daniel did not call. Rachel did not call. No one knocked on the door. I moved through the house at my own pace, which was slow, and I ate simple meals, and I watched the oak tree lose 3 more leaves to the October wind, and I read 40 pages of a novel I had been meaning to finish since August. My wrist ached less on the second day. On the third day, I walked to the end of the driveway and back without my heart rate climbing uncomfortably, which the doctor had told me to try. It felt strange, the absence of urgency. I had lived for so long inside other people's timelines, Daniel's deadlines, Rachel's demands, the children's schedules, the rolling series of emergencies that had constituted my usefulness to that household, that having only my own timeline felt almost suspect. As if I had forgotten something. As if I was supposed to be somewhere. I wasn't. The afternoon of the third day, Daniel called. I was sitting in the armchair by the side window, the one with the thin curtain, the same chair I had sat in 3 days ago watching Rachel arrange her children in front of my door. I looked at his name on the screen and felt something I hadn't expected. Not dread, not the old reflexive anxiety of what does he need now. Just a kind of steady watchfulness, the feeling of a woman who has stopped being surprised by things and started simply observing them. I answered, "Mom." His voice was careful, measured. the voice of someone who had rehearsed an opening. "How are you feeling?" "Better," I said. "My wrist is improving." "Good." A pause. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the 11 days. Have you?" "I have." Another pause longer. "I don't have a good explanation for it. I've been trying to come up with one and I can't." I waited. "I think I told myself that you were fine," he said. "That you would have called if you needed something. That you were capable and independent and you didn't need me checking in." He stopped. "But I think I told myself that because it was convenient. Because it meant I didn't have to rearrange anything." It was the most honest thing he had said to me in years. I was careful not to reward it too quickly. "That's a reasonable thing to notice about yourself," I said. "Mom, I want to come by, not to argue, not to ask for anything. I just want to see you." I looked at the thin curtain at the empty driveway beyond it. 3 days ago, that driveway had held his truck and Rachel's car and 2 suitcases and a box sealed with packing tape. Now it held only the shape of October light on concrete. "Not yet," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "Okay, just that. No argument, no negotiation, no. Why not? When you're ready, I'll let you know." Another pause. Then he said, "Is there anything you need, groceries or—" "Margaret has been helping," I said. "I'm managing." The silence that followed had a particular texture to it. The texture of a man hearing his mother say someone else's name where his name should have been and understanding exactly why. "Okay," he said again, quietly. "Goodbye, Daniel." "Goodbye, Mom." I set the phone on the side table and looked out the window. The oak tree had gone still. The street was empty. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and then stopped. That evening, I heard Daniel's truck on the street. He didn't pull into the driveway. He slowed, almost stopped, then kept going. I saw the shape of his headlights sweep across the front window as he passed. He drove past my house slowly, the loose heat shield rattling in the dark, and then the sound faded and the street was quiet again. He had come. He had not knocked. He had just driven past to see if the lights were on. They were. I turned back to my book and kept reading. Before I reveal what Daniel heard that night, standing in the dark outside his mother's gate, type "truth" in the comments if you think he finally deserves to know. This is the moment everything shifts. A quick note, this story contains some fictional elements added for emotional depth and storytelling. Any resemblance to specific names or places is coincidental, but the kind of betrayal Evelyn lived through, that is something far too many people recognize. He came back 4 days after that. I didn't know he was there at first. I had turned the porch light off at 9 the way I always did and gone to sit in the living room with the lamp on low and the television running quietly in the background, not watching it, just letting it fill the silence, the way you do when the quiet starts to feel too large. My wrist was better. Not good, but better. I had managed to button my own shirt that morning for the first time since the fall, which had felt like a small and private victory. I heard a car slow on the street. I didn't move toward the window. Cars slowed on my street all the time. But then the engine cut off and the particular silence that followed, not the silence of a car that had passed, but the silence of a car that had stopped, made me set down my book. I moved to the edge of the curtain. Daniel's truck was parked at the curb, not in the driveway. That was different from before. Before he had pulled into the driveway with the confidence of a man who expected to be let in. Tonight he had parked on the street, which meant something, even if he hadn't worked out yet what it meant. He was sitting in the driver's seat. I could see the shape of him through the windshield, not moving, just sitting. Then I saw the other car. Rachel's car was parked 2 houses down, partially under the shadow of a maple tree, the kind of parking that isn't hiding exactly, but isn't announcing itself either. The interior light was on. I could see her in the front seat, her phone pressed to her ear. I watched. Daniel climbed out of the truck slowly. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, his hands in his jacket pockets looking at my house. Then he started walking toward the front path and stopped. Rachel's voice carried in the night air with startling clarity. The street was still. There was no wind, no traffic, nothing to soften or absorb sound. She was speaking at the volume people use when they believe they are alone, which is always louder than they think. Daniel stood frozen on the front path 6 feet from my gate. "She won't budge," Rachel was saying. "I've tried everything. Daniel's useless. He keeps feeling sorry for her." A pause. "I know, Mom. I know. But listen, if she won't let us in willingly, there are other ways to handle this." Another pause shorter. "Daniel usually wants to keep everyone happy. I just need to remind him where his responsibility is. I just need to work on him a little more. Get him feeling guilty enough that he pressures her from that side." I stood very still behind my curtain. Patricia's voice was not audible from where I was, but Rachel's responses painted the shape of it clearly enough. "Of course she changed the documents," Rachel said, her voice dropping briefly before rising again. "But that doesn't matter long term. If Daniel stays in her good graces, he still inherits everything eventually. We just have to be patient." She laughed, a short, dry sound. "She's 70 years old with a broken wrist and no one coming to check on her. How long do you think she can hold out?" On the front path, Daniel had not moved. I watched him from behind the curtain, and I watched something happen to his posture that I had not seen since he was a child, since the afternoon he was 11 years old, and had come home from school to tell me that a boy in his class had been hurt, and Daniel had walked away instead of helping, and he had stood in the kitchen doorway with that particular stillness that meant he was holding something he did not know how to put down. He was holding it again now. Rachel kept talking. "Just make sure he stays soft on her. The sympathy angle is our best move. If he goes in there crying about how sorry he is, she'll open the door eventually. That's how she's wired." A pause. "Exactly. Use the kids too if you have to. Emma asking for her grandma hits different than us asking." Daniel's hand came up and pressed flat against the gatepost. His head dropped forward slightly. Not much, an inch, maybe less. But I had spent 40 years reading that body, and I knew what that inch meant. It meant the bottom had dropped out of something. "Nifty to have a plan B," Rachel was saying, cheerful now in the way she got when she was pleased with her own thinking. "Daniel's predictable mom. That's honestly his most useful quality." The call ended. Rachel's interior light went off. Daniel stood at my gate for a long time after that. He did not move toward the door. He did not go back to his truck. He stood exactly where he was, one hand on the gatepost, and I could see from the set of his shoulders that he was doing the kind of thinking that takes everything you have, the kind where you are not working out what to do next, but working out who you actually are. I stepped back from the curtain. I thought about going to the door, opening it before he knocked the way I used to when he was a teenager coming home late, and I had been awake listening for the sound of his key. But this was not that. He did not need me to make this easier for him. He needed to stand there and feel the full weight of what he had heard without someone opening a door to rescue him from it. I went back to my chair. I picked up my book. I did not read it. I sat with it open in my lap and listened to the night outside the oak tree, the distant bark of that same dog, the small ordinary sounds of a street at rest. After a while, I heard footsteps on the front path. They stopped at the door. A long pause. Then very quietly a single knock, not Rachel's knock, not the sharp, demanding percussion of someone who expects to be obeyed. One knock, soft and uncertain, the knock of a man who was no longer sure he deserved an answer. I looked at the door from across the room. My hand tightened on the book in my lap. He had not gone straight to the door. I understood that later after I had time to think through the sequence of it. He had stood at the gate for a long time after Rachel's car pulled away. She had left without seeing him, without knowing he had been there at all. Her taillights disappearing around the corner while he stood in the dark with his hand on the post. Then, he had walked back to his truck. He had sat in it for 40 minutes before he knocked. I know this because I watched from behind the curtain in the dark of my living room with the television off and the lamp turned low. I watched him get back in the truck after Rachel left, and I watched the truck stay exactly where it was, engine off, no movement inside. Just a man sitting alone with something he could not unfeel. I had sat in that kind of stillness myself. After Gerald died, I had sat in the driveway for an hour after coming home from the hospital, because I could not work out how to go inside a house that had Gerald in every room, but not in any of them. You sit, because moving feels like agreeing to what has happened. You sit because the space between where you are and where you have to go next is the last place where things are still almost the way they were. Daniel sat for 40 minutes. I imagined what was moving through him in that truck in the dark on my street. Not because I could read his mind, I had never been able to do that, not even when he was small, but because I knew the inventory of what he had just heard. His wife's voice, flat and certain, and stripped of any pretense, calling him predictable, calling him useful, laying out the architecture of a plan in which he was not a participant, but a tool, describing the woman who had raised him as something to be waited out like weather. I thought about the first time he had brought Rachel home. She'd been sharp and confident and very funny, the kind of woman who commands a room without appearing to try. I had liked her immediately, which I had later understood was part of the skill. She was very good at being liked when she needed to be. I thought about all the times I had told myself that whatever friction existed between us was simply the ordinary difficulty of in-law relationships. All the times I had smoothed things over, made excuses, swallowed observations that might have caused trouble. I had done it for Daniel's sake, because I believed that protecting his marriage was the same as protecting him. I understood now that I had been protecting something he had already lost, or perhaps something that had never existed in the form I imagined. The truck door opened at 9:47. Daniel got out slowly, not the purposeful movement of a man with a plan, but the careful movement of someone whose legs have gone stiff from sitting too long. He stood on the sidewalk. He looked at my house. Then he walked to the gate, through it, up the front path, and he stopped at the door. The knock when it came was nothing like the knocking of a week ago. One knock, soft, almost hesitant, the knock of a man who was not sure he had the right to be there and was knocking anyway because he had nowhere else to bring what he was carrying. I crossed the room. My hand found the deadbolt. I stood there for a moment with my fingers on it, not turning it yet. On the other side of the door, Daniel was not knocking again. He was not calling out. He was simply waiting in the way that people wait when they know they do not have the leverage to demand anything and are down to nothing but hope. I turned the deadbolt. I opened the door. He looked the way I had expected him to look, exhausted, hollowed out, the particular flatness in the face of someone who has been crying in private and is trying not to show it and is not entirely succeeding. He was still in his work clothes. He had been in them all day, all evening, through all of it. He looked at my casted wrist first, then at my face. "Mom," he said. His voice broke on the single syllable, just slightly, just enough. I stepped back from the door. "Come in," I said. He came inside and stood in my hallway, and the first thing he did was look around, not the calculating survey of someone assessing a property, but the look of a man who has been away from somewhere and is remembering what it feels like. The brass clock on the mantel, the fern beside the stairs, the kitchen light on low, the folder still on the counter where I had left it. "Sit down," I said. "I'll make tea." "Mom, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," I said. "Sit down." He sat. I filled the kettle with my left hand the way I had learned to do everything in the past 2 weeks. I heard him behind me, the scrape of the kitchen chair, the particular sound a large man makes when he is trying to take up less space than he occupies. I set the kettle on the burner and turned to look at him. His hands were flat on the table. Palms down fingers spread the posture of someone steadying themselves against a surface. He was looking at the folder on the counter. He had recognized it, I could tell. "I heard her," he said. He did not say Rachel's name. He did not need to. Outside, before I knocked, I heard everything she said to my mother-in-law. I waited. She called me predictable. His jaw tightened. She said I was useful. He looked up at me. She talked about Emma like she was a chess piece. The kettle began to heat. I know, I said quietly. Did you know she was like this? His voice cracked again. Harder this time, grief and anger arriving together the way they always do. Did you know, and you never told me? I looked at my son. This man I had held when he was 4 hours old. This person I had spent 40 years trying to protect, and I told him the truth. I had suspicions, I said, but Daniel, you had to see it yourself. The kettle began to whistle. I turned to lift it off the burner, and behind me, Daniel was quiet in the way that people are quiet when they have just been told something true and are still deciding what to do with it. I poured the water over the tea bags and carried both mugs to the table, with my left hand setting his down in front of him carefully, the way I had set things in front of him his entire life. He wrapped both hands around the mug. I kept telling myself she was just practical, he said. That's what I called it, practical. She wanted things to be efficient and organized, and I told myself that was a reasonable way to be. He looked down at the tea. I told myself a lot of things. I know, I said. Did you ever try to tell me? His eyes came up. Did you ever try and I just didn't listen? I thought about that honestly because he deserved an honest answer and not a comfortable one. Once, I said, about 4 years ago, after the Christmas where she rearranged my kitchen while I was at church and told me it was more functional the way she'd done it. He winced. He remembered. I said something to you about it afterward, quietly, and you said she meant well. I wrapped my hands around my own mug. After that, I decided it wasn't worth the cost of saying it again. I'm sorry, he said. Not the reflexive sorry of someone trying to end a difficult conversation, but the slow, deliberate sorry of someone who has turned a thing over and understood its full weight. I'm sorry I made it cost something to tell me the truth. The kitchen was quiet around us. The clock on the mantel counted its way through half a minute. The children, I said. Emma and Cooper, whatever happens between you and Rachel, those children are not to be used. Not by her, not by anyone. His jaw tightened. No, he said firmly. They're not. Emma asked if she was going home. I said. That day on the porch. She asked, and nobody answered her. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, there was something in his face that had not been there before. Not guilt exactly, but the particular grief of a parent who has seen their child managed instead of loved and recognized their own failure to prevent it. I know, he said. I know. They're good children, I said. None of this is theirs. No, he agreed. It isn't. He drank his tea. I drank mine. Outside, the oak tree moved in a wind that had come up since dark, its branches making the soft sound against the house that I had always found comforting, even as a child, the sound of something alive and flexible, bending without breaking. What happens now? He asked. With Rachel. He nodded. I chose my words carefully, the way you do when you know what you say will be remembered. That's your marriage, I said. I'm not going to tell you what to do with it, but I will tell you this: what you heard tonight in front of this house is not a misunderstanding. It's not a bad moment. It's a window into something that was always there, and you're the only one who can decide what to do with what you saw through it. He was quiet for a long time after that. The house, he finally said. The rental. She signed a 6-month lease on our place last week. I found the paperwork yesterday. He looked at his hands. She did it without telling me. I know, I said, or something close to it. I have to deal with that. He said it like a man making a list, which I recognized as the way he managed things that were too large to feel all at once. I have to figure out where we're living and what we're doing, and... He stopped. She's going to be very angry. Yes, I said. She is. She'll try to make it my fault. Yes, I said again. She will. He looked at me. And yours. She's welcome to, I said. I've updated my documents. My house is mine. My decisions are mine. Rachel's anger is the one thing in this situation she's fully entitled to, and she can have all of it she wants. Something shifted in his face, not quite a smile, but adjacent to one. The first crack of something lighter in an evening that had been very heavy. "You always did know how to draw a line," he said. "I forgot for a while," I said. "I'm remembering." He nodded slowly. Then he reached across the table and placed his hand over my casted wrist, not grabbing it, not squeezing, just resting there. The way you rest a hand on something you were careless with and are trying to be more careful with now. "I'm going to come by on Saturday," he said. "If that's okay, I'll bring groceries. I'll fix the railing on the porch, the left post. I noticed it's soft." I looked at him. "You noticed that?" I said. "I noticed a lot of things tonight," he said quietly. "I should have been noticing for a long time." I did not tell him he was forgiven. Forgiveness was not a thing I had ready to hand over in a kitchen on a Tuesday evening, and he did not need me to pretend otherwise. What I did was leave his hand where it was and drink the rest of my tea. When he left 20 minutes later, he hugged me carefully, mindful of the wrist, which was the first time in 11 days that anyone had been mindful of the wrist. I stood in the open doorway and watched him walk to his truck. He turned back once at the gate. "The porch light," he said. "Leave it on for me Saturday." I reached over and clicked it on. "Saturday," I said. He got in the truck and drove away, the heat shield rattling its familiar sound down the quiet street. I stood in the lit doorway for a moment longer. Then I went inside, locked the deadbolt, and carried the 2 empty mugs to the sink. I spent 70 years believing that love meant never closing the door. I was wrong. Looking back now, I think God gave me that broken wrist for a reason, not to punish me, but to finally make me stop. Stop running. Stop absorbing. Stop mistaking endurance for devotion. This is my truth, and maybe it is yours too. Family drama does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly in the shape of assumptions, people who treat your kindness like a contract they never signed but fully intend to collect on. If you see yourself in my story, please hear me. Do not wait until you are 70, sitting alone on a kitchen floor before you decide your needs are worth protecting. Do not let family drama teach you lessons the hard way, the way it taught me. I am not a victim. I am a woman who forgot for a long time that boundaries are not walls. They are doors that only you get to open. These revenge stories with mom, stories like mine, exist because so many of us have lived them quietly. Every revenge stories with mom carries the same quiet question at its heart. When did we forget that we are allowed to matter? If this one gave you something to think about, something to feel, something to carry into your own life, then it was worth telling. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment. I want to know, have you ever had to close a door to protect yourself? And if this kind of family drama and revenge stories with mom speaks to you, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know. The stories that follow contain some fictional elements created for reflection and understanding. If this kind of content isn't for you, that's completely okay. There's something out there for everyone, and we respect your choice to find it.